And I'm back. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. He. You agree to tell you a story, and welcome aboard. I was here earlier this morning, and I did about 30 minutes, and I went off and had lunch at my neighborhood. I mean, can you smell it? That was lunch. And I had it at a place that was one of the greatest holler halls there was. And a holler hall, you have holler stores, right? And then you have holler halls. Holler stores are these people's homes, and they were truck farmers, and now they're getting old, so they can't do the whole thing. But they still have, an acre or half an acre, a quarter acre that's prime growing. The sun hits it just right. So they grow vegetables, every kind of squashes and cucumbers and tomatoes and potatoes and onions and squashes of every type and leafy things and spinach and kale and et al. And they sell it to their neighbors, right? And in their garage or their living room, their kitchen, they will have the internet in their little neck of the woods. So if you need to go check on something at your doctor's, your banks, or want to get something, they will be the person that Amazon would come to and drop it off at their house. So and they would have a little, they were running a nice little enterprise. And when I got here 20 years ago, that was kind of what was going on. The internet thing didn't really come until the early O's. Anyway, the place I had lunch in used to be a holler hole, and Richard and Caroline had grown up here. Richard went off to war. He married Caroline and came back. He went off to college. He went and worked in the corporate world because smart guy, and he had a college education, and they lived in Ohio, some manufacturing town. And then he got sent to someplace else, and they liked that. And they had kids, they had three or four kids, and they were grown up in those two different places, and it worked out well for the kids. And then after kids were gone, and Richard took an early retirement because he was getting stuff. Because he went to the full Monty in the military, and he went to school. The military sent him to school, so he got even better schooling than just the GI Bill. So he comes back probably in his 50s. He come back because their parents are getting old and the farm is getting, they can't do it. So Richard comes back. They want to be farmer. His mom had a store, so he takes it and he rebuilds it into a holler hole, right? And it's like the holler version of Walmart's. I mean, he had everything you ever frig, and he had a hardware store down below that had more stuff than Walmart's. Every kind of circuit breaker, switch, you name it, he had it. And he was great on the internet, so he would go and just buy lots of stuff that really super cheap, right? Even cheaper than Walmart's because people already bought it, sold it, made their money on it. Now they had to get rid of it so they could move more shit in, right? So he did that, and they had a really good restaurant where everyone would come. It was like community center. And so all those farmers who didn't have the internet, didn't have this, they were there, and they had people working there who knew how to and would be there, and it was the greatest of place. And that was kind of my office for a number of years when I was in, because there was no internet here, and because it's Sawtooth Mountains, I couldn't even get a satellite to get anything. So that was that, and I did that, and then they got older and older, and then they had to, hang up the stirrups, and they moved back to Ohio where their kids were. So, and they sold, that place and this place, and the mobsters from Banner Elk, North Carolina, came into that neck of the woods back in the probably early '80s with like $20 million and bought everything, a Banner Elk and all Linville Falls and all that stuff around there. That nice, interesting Blue Ridge Mountain area, kind of between Asheville and whatchamacallit, uh, Johnson City. Now you have to realize that whole spread of this accordion between the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains, which basically goes from Blacksburg, Virginia, to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was the Silicon Valley of the 19th century. This is where the cutting edge technology. This is where DuPont and uh, Kodak Chemical and everything chemical and everything electronic, cutting edge. And they were like, and they were screwing around. They had vacuum tubes up until the 40s, but they were screwing around with silicon. They understood that if we can get this right, we could add this thing called a transistor. And that is why Oak Ridge was put here, because there were so many companies like GE, Westinghouse, Univac, um, and a whole bunch of guys like that were here. And this wasn't where they were manufacturing. This is where they had their research labs, and they had tech on one side, and ETSU, two of the mammoth engineering universities in the United States. Forget Stanford, these guys. Forget MIT, these guys, right? And so, because the other was like white man technology. And I spent a nice little, 75, I get. Is that Fish? Hey, Fish. And Jane and Fish. Hello, gang. So yesterday when I had that phone call and I walked away, I should have said, now talk amongst yourselves. And I'm sure you did. And Fish, you were right, because your last statement was his battery's going to die any minute now. When I came back, my battery was just about to die, so I closed out real quick. So I didn't get to read what everyone had to say. But I noticed, I hadn't put my glasses on yet, but I noticed you guys were going on. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I look at it every now and then, make a comment here or there. But the chat is between, you're the cadre. Me, I'm just, your griot telling you a story. So anyway, so I went and had lunch, and there were all these people from all over the place who were just buying real estate. And really, they saw it on the internet. And this is the first time they've come to look at the property they just bought. And I've been here more than 20 years. So I said, so where'd you buy it? And I said, oh, over there. Well, you're going to find you're going to have no drinking water. And you're on such a steep thing, you're not going to be able to get septic. And getting electricity up to your place is going to be super expensive. But we live in a gated community. I said, good luck. You should read your contract a little closely. They don't. All they're doing is putting. You're like in jail. They put a fence around you and stuck you in an HMO, and homeowners, laws, right? And so it's like, or HOM, homeowners manifesto, or whatever that is. And they were like, huh? I just spent 70,000. Yeah, you spent 70,000 for a tenth of an acre of a cliff. You have air rights. That's what you got. I mean, the cost of building a foundation to put a house on is going to be more than what your house is going to cost. And they're like, and there were other, so there were a couple of guys who were like, wow. And I said, oh, let me read your palms, right? And the people who are now working there, the guys who own it, like I said, are mobsters. And so they get a staff in and they work there, and they just squeeze every bit of the lemon of life out of these people. And then they throw them away and get new people who are desperate, right? Who can do the job. And they squeeze them, and I've seen them do it already 3 or 4 times. And when they bought, I was sitting in, Richard and his wife's, holler community hall when those folks were striking the deal, right? And there was the guy who's the poster child of this. He's like in his 40s, got blonde hair. He looks like, Paul, whoever, and a movie star. And his wife, who's like a kind of, looks like a rat. A chunky rat, and she did all the talking. He was just smiling. And yes, this guy, she just kept talking about him in a third person, and so was he. Anyway, so she was, I just love how you, Carolyn. This is we're not gonna touch anything. We're gonna keep everything the way it was, and we're just gonna keep going. And there were all these people that had been working there for like 10 years, and there was a cook. Yeah, she could be a little testy, but she was a great person. But boy, could she cook, and boy, could she bake. So instead of having hostess goodies and all of that, she would make all that stuff and put it on the shelf. And instead of $3 for two ho hos, you could get a nice, amazing piece of German chocolate cheesecake for 75 cents. I mean, so anyway, this ratty Tootsie Roll was going. We're never going to change anything. So they do the deal. Um, uh, J and C go up to Ohio to be with their kids for a month or so, and then they bought themselves a nice little house nearby, and then they were coming back to, basically move all their stuff and then figure out what to do with their house and their farm. And when they came back, the contractors had ripped that place apart, and all the stuff that she kept there, all the photographs, all the knickknacks that really gave it flavor, they were throwing in a dumpster. And the ratty Tootsie Roll basically didn't say, Carolyn, come here. We'll work this out. She called the police. Now, the police grow up around there. So they knew, and they were like, no, they sided with Caroline. And so they basically stopped all construction so Caroline could get the stuff out of there. So, the mobster rich people who think they own the world got just upset. And they couldn't do much. And their lawyer said, well, just let her get the stuff and then keep going. So they've turned that place into, and so the store that used to be Richard's Walmart's, so if I wanted anything, instead of having to drive 40 miles to Walmart's or Lowe's or the real electric supply store, Richard had it. So I only had to go 3 miles, right? If I was fixing someone's well or doing something for myself, I had to go 3 miles. And if I didn't have any cash, Rich said, pay me tomorrow. So, and so I had lunch there, and lunch was supposed to be $8, $8 for the drink, right? And so when I was paying off my bill, it was $11, and it was still okay for the meal I had, right? It was okay. It wasn't as good as the last guy who was a cook, but it was okay. And I'll be able to. I took most of 3/4 of with me to you know put in my meals, my next 3 meals here. Anyway, and that's what I do when go to a restaurant. I only eat a third of it and take 2/3 home and eat 4 meals out of it. I add some other stuff to it and make it better. Anyway, so um, $11 for an 8 meal. I said, so what's the differences? Oh well, two things. One, we have a surcharge. I said, surcharge? Oh yes, surcharge. Well, how come you don't enumerate? You said, lunch special $8. How don't you put? So what is it? It's $2 surcharge. Okay, so it's 11.10. So what's the other $2? Well, we had to brew. You asked for coffee, and it was past 12 o'clock. I said, I came in here 10:15. I mean 12:15. He said, well, it's past 12 o'clock, and then we stopped having coffee at 12 o'clock. I said, did you have to brew another? No, we still had a whole pot, but it was after 12 o'clock. So that coffee didn't come with a meal anymore. It was $2. I mean, that is that, right? And that is the business outcome of capitalism, right? It's called uh, what do you call that? Fascist capitalism. I mean, that's what fascism, capitalism. Capitalism is when capital controls the means of production, right? So, communism is when the state controls the capital's means of production. And fascism is when the corporate state owns and rules everything. And that's where we are now, kids, right? When we don't have capitalism, the same capitalism, because capitalism is about, you read Adam Smith, it's about why it should work is that the process of competition should keep the prices down. There should be, meaning there in Adam Smith's economy, there was no deflation or inflation. that was manufactured after our little deal at Jekyll Island, and we got the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve has nothing to do with the federal government. It's a privately owned corporation. Federal Reserve has as much to do with the government as Federal Express. But Federal Express only delivers packages to you, and you're paying for that. But the Federal Reserve prints our money and sets our economic standards. And that's why we did not have deflation or inflation. Um, we had economic collapses, but they were precipitated by banking cartels. And that's what Teddy Roosevelt tried to do with the Teapot Dome scandal, tried to get a lid on that, but that didn't work too well for him or us. Right? We got Woodrow Wilson a few presidents later, and there was an assassination in between. So, that's where we are right now. So, the title of the show: Are you a house nig? And I am a African American that's melanin challenged, and so are whatever flavor color you are. Again, as I was ending the show earlier this morning, I said, "Gang, I'm going to talk about where the problems in our country have nothing to do with class, race, gender, or any of that. Right? It has everything to do with class. Right? It's not race, it's not religion, it's not gender, it's none of those things. It's class, right? And the class is that 1/10 of 1% that owns and controls everything, including you. Because when we went up the gold standard, Nixon, basically what he did. So why did America become the oil cartel? Because we dumped all this money into our defense department. At least, before World War II, we were honest. We called it the War Department. We knew we were going to just keep having these wars, so it was a War Department, part of our business plan. But to fool everyone, we called it defense. People could go along with it, and then they stuck, defense industry all over the United States. Every little town has some kind of widget or something being manufactured that do two things: one, make it a target; two, enable that economy, as Eisenhower coined the phrase, the military industrial complex. And he should have gone further. There's a guy named Dr. Joseph P. Farrell. He's got a ton of books. You can go to Dark Journalism. He's always on that uh, channel DJ, and he really enumerates it really well. And so they also have this woman called Catherine Austin Fitts, who worked in the Reagan administration. She was in Person Treasury, and then she was working for Freddie Mac, and she went to the president and said, we're right at this really interesting time. If we just change things a little bit, America's economy will never have to worry about debt. We'll never have to worry about finances. We will be able to, as long this is a pump, and the pump is working pretty good right now. I mean, we just went through almost a 30-year depression, and now we're coming out the other side. This is the time to invest. This is the time to change a few things this way and that way. And Reagan was going, maybe, and then he gets shot. He was going to do some interesting things, and then he got shot. But he didn't die. He went off to this hospital and was at the window in his bathrobe waving. So whatever they did to Ronnie, he became, not so much, right? And he also, that was, when he came back from Reykjavik, where Mikhail Gorbachev and him decided to get rid of all nuclear weapons and get away from the Cold War. And because Mikhail Gorbachev knew that the Soviet Union was going down the tubes, but he wanted to keep the Soviet Union together, but make it more like what we didn't quite have the EU yet. We had the common market. He wanted to join the common market, right? And he also wanted to join NATO, right? So everyone would be on the same page economically and militarily, and we wouldn't have any wars, right? And that's what Reagan. Yeah, that's a great idea, Mike. And he comes back and gets shot, but doesn't die, or did he? And so I've been listening to people. This guy wrote a book about um, QAnon and the totally off the wall conspiracy theory stuff, right? And it is, it's totally off the wall. But in every conspiracy theory, how it works is there's a little thread. That's interesting. And so I don't believe any of that crap, but there's a lot of interesting data. And that's what I look at, the data, right? So somebody has sent us a couple of long messages here. So why don't I get rid of all of this and see what they're saying? So I can stop blabbing. Okay, Fish says the extra dollar, they should have given you the pot. Exactly. They should have given me the coffee machine, right? Uh, doing simultaneous BBC radio and Owl. Oh boy, that's real good. It's like double indemnity. And that's how I work. I listen to everyone's everything, and 90% of not 90, 70% of everything out of the mouth of any media is propaganda, right? Well, I don't have, you know, anything to propagandize, right? I just tell stories, right? And and some people go, "Well, you believe in a stupid thing about globalization." I said, "Well, they talk about it all the time. It's not just me." And I call it, I take Catherine Austin Fitts' little term, Mr. Globaloney. And there are a couple of that one guy I always um, you know play our conversations. That's because he reminds me of Gabby Smith and the TV kind of radio. Oh, get off my lawn! That's this guy, and he's always going, "You're so full of shit," because it's America's wrong. It's America, Israel, terrible Israel, and the stupid Arabs. He's like dissing everyone without putting a positive understanding of anything, right? But when I tell him the stuff I tell you, he like loses his mind, and then he goes, "You have no data to show." And then I send it to him, and he goes, "I don't have time to read that." I said, "Okay." Now he sends me a ton of stuff, which I do read. I have this thing called the Evelyn Wood Speed Reading Course, and I can read like 5 pages in a minute, right? So I just put it on, and I'm reading the whole thing. So I read the whole thing. But when I talked to him, "So did you read that?" I said, "Yeah, I looked at it." And then he goes, "What?" I said, "So tell me about it." "What do you mean? You didn't read it?" I said, "Well, I love hearing him move. One day I'm going to hear this explosion and the top of his head blown off and his brains are scattered all over the ceiling. And that'll be the last time I talk to him. But that's my little cheeky monkey self. And he keeps answering the phone. And usually at a certain point in our conversation, we get to a place where he goes, everything's I can see your point, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so if you look at everything, this isn't just by chance. All this, just chaos and starvation and environmental terribleness and you name it, right? Oh, when you have all these train wrecks like that, see, that train wreck isn't the only one. And it didn't hit the news for at least 2 weeks until it started hitting TikTok and YouTube, and that's when they had to say something about it, right? And they still haven't really said anything about it. And certain politicians are going on and on about it and not doing squat about it. Any questions? Keep my finger on the pulse of the corporate structure agenda revealed. It's a Friday, yeah, Friday ritual, yep, and then what isn't a ritual? Yep, exactly. Everything's a freaking ritual, and people don't realize it. I must say, love the comments with martyred artist. Yeah, I have, well, it's whenever the martyred artist or Fish or the amazing girl or a few others, they know they're being on the show, so they do their best. And they're, when I basically say just, and I don't like say it, but the only reason I put those people on is because their heart is open and they're always telling the truth. I don't like say, "Here's the script, let's do it this way." I just ask a question and then they go with it. The real truth is so bizarre. Nobody would realize the truth. Yeah, and that's why things like X Files and Fringe and a whole bunch of other, what's that thing that was on a platform, a strange, where there was a down up and the out and the up down, and and the kid got sucked into another dimension, and he had to communicate through the Christmas lights. I don't know if that's still going, but that was a pretty great show. And there were a lot of, I mean, J.J. Abrams and Chris Carter really are the two that kind of dumped that stuff. And to begin with, the guy who did a Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, and the guy who did, there were a couple of really good shows. The visit, no, there were the visitors, and then, but the guy with the one arm, they were chasing him, and what was the other one? About the aliens, and the guy saw something he shouldn't, and then they're trying to chase him, and he's trying to warn the world about it. So that, it's like the movie, The Pod People, or whatever that was. Um, and he's about to be, he's already in the straitjacket, and they're about to take him off to give him the shot to knock him out. And they're at the ambulance, and the police guy is there, and he's going, and then this other cop comes over, and it was just a truck that overturned from where this guy was coming from, and all these pods, look, right? And so they go to the truck, and in the police truck, and there's all these pods, and some of them are kind of popping out, and there are people in them, and so that the guy, luckily, the state trooper is high enough on the, and he goes, oh my God. And he gets on the radio and gets the governor and says, we got to lock this down. We need the National Guard. We got to be, and you see, he doesn't get the shot in there. That's kind of where we are right now. But you don't have to worry about being a pod person, because if you're the freaking decider, because you are not your body. Yeah, so they could pop out another version of you, but that's just you. I mean, that's just your avatar they're copying, not you, not your consciousness, not your super conscious mind. They can't get at that. And that's what they're trying to do with this, you know, you know. They can kid it by sticking you into a virtual reality, right? And that's why it's called a virtual reality. It's not real, but it's kind of virtual. You can't tell the difference. And when you're in there, and so that's, and Spielberg keeps making these movies that give us the heads up of what's coming. And he's not doing it because he's a hero, a great guy. He's doing it to make a lot of money, because the people in power he's just on the upper middle level of the managerial class, and he's very talented. He makes really great movies, and they give him all the assets he needs to make whatever movie he wants, and it always has that stream. So he did this movie called Player One, which told you, hey kids, this is what the reality. And when you got the visor on, oh, it's a beautiful world. Take the visor off, they're all homeless people over there with visors who are having sex with Marilyn Monroe and da 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 da. So we're right there, kids. We're right there. But they can't really stick it to you unless you let them to. Right? I mean, they can, the pod guy can pop out, but unless you let your superconscious mind drift into that pod guy, not going to happen. Because that's what this is. That's what our bodies are. We are the pod people already. But our, we are all our relations, that unified spirit, not soul, spirit, because the soul is something they put in there. It is the hardware, software between their device world of non-existence and our spirit world, which is the only thing there is, love's co-creation, right? And that's what we're here to do, to get through all of this. Is all an experience to give us. We're in the sandbox, kindergarten. We're learning about what it is to be a spiritual entity, to live in. Yep. We could beat the system. That's right, exactly. Because the thing that crushes a system like that is our unconditional love, our unconditional forgiveness. That's why Christ wasn't the only guy. He's a big, long line of guys like him. And in the New Testament, The only true valuable thing of all of the New Testament, the rest of it is just advertising. It's like when you go on the internet and you go on YouTube and you want to watch a YouTube, you got to watch a commercial. Well, the New Testament, all of that thing up to where Jesus is up on a cross and he goes, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And basically, what Jesus is saying is God, meaning Jesus is, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? Father, the prime mover. That I keep talking about the prana life force that we breathing in that animates us. That's Father. Um, and Son is Jesus. The Holy Spirit is us, and the us is the grounding, and because we walk on the ground, so that connection between heaven and earth is us. We're the Spirit, right? And it's indestructible. So that's why we're not, there's no end times. There is no big Holocaust, blah, blah. Yeah, there's going to be some bad days. If you lived through the 900 years of the Black Plague and the Dark Ages, that wasn't fun. But a lot of people did. You read, what's his name? The guy who wrote, what was his name? He wasn't Shakespeare. He was before Shakespeare. And he wrote this great story called House. No, it was about this woman who was in the Middle Ages, and she came from the lowest. She married a guy who had a pub and a store and an inn, and he dies, and she takes it over, and she makes a nice fortune to the point where no one can tell her what to do. If you want dinner, kiss my ass. So, and I think she in Chaucer. That's the boy. Chaucer wrote that, and the House of the Bath or something like that. So it was in Bath where the Romans were, right? So that's the time period, and so that's a really great one because right there it's taking place where the Romans have their whole, because they've overextended themselves, so everything collapsed. So they were in England a long time, and they had some real serious military and economic footholds there. And that's why England turned out the way it did, because it was these crazy Celts and other tribal people of such manner, and the Romans, right? So that took this craziness and the discipline of the Roman legion made England, and that's why they call it, Great Britain, or there's another term that kind of gives you the heads up that there's Scotland, and then there's this part, and then there's that part, and then there's Ireland, and then they broke away, and we only have Northern Ireland, and that's why they're having issues about it. So all of this stuff is right in front of us. The shit that's going down in Israel, because people don't realize the Anunnaki are the Aryan race that the Germans were talking about, right? If you really look at them, because the Hebrew tribes are something than the Jewish people, right? Because the Hebrew tribes were always a bunch of tribes, but they were all Hebrew, right? They weren't, Sumerians, and they weren't Persians, and they weren't this, and they weren't that. They were the Hebrew tribes, right? That God kind of liked, right? And that's what they say. And the other guys, the Egyptians said, "Oh, Sol is our God. He loves us." And that's why they had religions of many gods, because if one God didn't fit what you wanted, there was always another one, right? Where the Hebrews won, right? And same with Islam. Islam has one too, right? Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are one religion, and so it goes on, and all this stuff is right in our faces, gang. It's like amazing. You don't really have to spend the amount of time I have going through libraries and seeing stuff. So, well, at the beginning of this, griot story that I'm telling you, I was telling you about this neck of the woods, right? And I was saying how this was the Silicon Valley, right? And that's because what was truly interesting was it wasn't like the Deep South, where had these big plantations, and they had Colonel Sanders, and he had all the slaves and all that stuff. These were people who had just had they're one generation from just coming off the boat. They were Irish, they were Scottish, they were German and Polish and a few other things. And they would either come to New York, Boston, or Philly, right? And then they'd be in those, pogroms, the ghettos, and then they'd have something on the ball. They'd make a few, nickels, and they would get themselves out of town. And like Pennsylvania was like going to California. So, and same with upstate New York. That's why they call it the Empire State. It made so many people's empires. My mother's family, 4 generations before her, they were some of the people that they called robber barons. I mean, they went up there and they huckstered land and convinced the American government that the Erie Canal should be made to connect the Atlantic to the Great Lakes. And they dug it because they were digging things in New York. And so they dug things there and they got real estate on the sides of it and they built stuff, towns and, hotels and you name it, they did it. So that was the interesting dynamic. How much juice do we have? I'm getting close to the end. I don't like. It's not good for. Yeah, I got 40%, so I got another half hour, give or take. So let's see what you guys are saying here. Let's see. Jamie says, "Real truth is so bizarre. Nobody would realize it. Not that they wouldn't realize it. They don't want to know. It would break their addiction to whatever belief they got. I mean, 1,000 years, a guy like me will go, well, why did their empire collapse? And why did, we go into 300 years of the Dark Ages? And why? And that's what I used to say about, 300 AD. Why did that happen? It was at the height of all these empires at them doing some pretty amazing stuff. And then all of a sudden, it all bad, right? Not everyone died. A lot of people did. There were some really nasty wars, but it didn't really. Then it was like 900 years of where everyone lived in their own slop. But if, like I said, you read Chaucer, it wasn't that bad. Everyone was having a good drink because they had to. Why all of Europe was drunk all the time is that they couldn't drink the drinking water. They'd die of cholera. So they had to drink something fermented. So everybody was drinking the mead. Everyone was drinking the grog. And that's what they call it, grog. You drank it and you were like, but you could still do your job. So these are the interesting motifs that are right in front of us. We're heading towards the grog times, But they want to see if they can, put the bit in our mouth, put the, saddle on and hit us with the spurs, and that's called, public media, technology, virtual reality, transhumanism, all of these things. I remember when I knew it was transhumanism, but I had one friend who was he was straight up Rasta boy. I mean, he was a real Rastafari. He just wasn't some guy from Queens who wanted to smoke pot. No, this guy, all his roots came from Jamaica and the islands, and his great auntie was Azira Austin Hearst, I think, the Black Queen of the Harlem Renaissance. She was a painter, a playwright, a scholar, an anthropologist. She was the only Black woman to go to Columbia, and not only she was she was in Margaret Mead's class, and the other girl who went to New Mexico and studied teenager sexual rights. And so where Zora went off and studied the Black culture because she was this anthropologist girl and she grew up in it. And so she wrote some a really great book called The Gods Are Watching Us and a few others. So she was like the cream of the crop, really famous. And then when the backlash of, good old Woodrow Wilson and because that whole KKK thing and Jim Crow was around after the Civil War, but it was also the Reconstruction, and Black folk were a good portion of the middle management of the federal government and state governments. They ran the post offices and were the bureaucrats, and so they were the teachers and the nurses and that they were bred to do that. But then when they were building a middle class economy, around before World War I, when Woodrow Wilson was there, he came in and just took a shotgun to it all. And so that was kind of when it was like right at the top of that inertia of that, which if it kept going would have been pretty amazing because You should go read or find out everything you can about Malcolm X because um, the difference between a house nig and a field nig is that house nig is sees his future with the continuation of the racist, and it is a racist thing, but you have to realize its predominant thing is class. Race is just a smokescreen. Race is there to keep the white poor people in mind because yeah, your life sucks, but at least you're not a nig. You know? And I can use that new. This is a new word that I'm using now that YouTube can't. It's nig, right? That doesn't mean a black person goes, I am an African American. That's melanin challenge. That's a nig. Anybody who fits into the class of the worker structure and believes it, that it's there for its good, for their well being, they're a house nig. Anybody who's down and out and really's got the boot on their neck, well, they're a field, nig, right? So we'll see how long that concept lasts, and if anyone starts screaming about it, because I'm not using any bad words. No, the algorithm not going to touch this. No, you know, we'll see what happens. And I'm, just doing this because I did. This is what I do, and I've been doing it now for almost May. It'll be 4 years. Holy moly! And that's what's given me the realization. I got it comfy here. It's a little inconvenient, when you live in the woods and it's 60 degrees below zero and you have no heat. Wow! And yes, you guys were really great. You sent me all of $40, you know, between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And could you survive on $40, gang? I don't think so. I don't think so. But your Sensei Al Bob sure did. So come on, send something to that PayPal. The dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42 at Gmail, dude awake 42. And I'm not charging you for anything. This, I'm not like my good friend Thor, who really, and Thor does a great job. I love him. Same with Diamond. And Diamond's better because he doesn't even do what Thor does. But he does have some interesting things that if you go on his website, oh, wow, I love that. So he doesn't even advertise that. He just does his show. And he's really, I think he was, he was the grandson of Oppenheimer, right? And that's why it's called Oppenheimer's Ranch. But I think he really was the illegitimate son of Lawrence Welk, right? So, and Diamond, if you see this, because I love that guy. That was a thumbs up for you kids. And how about some more thumbs up? There's 5 of you. How about 5 thumbs? Come on. And you guys need to have Sensei Al Bob nights at your house where you have a potluck dinner and people come. And I got like over 2,000 shows. You can watch any of them, right? You can do it like a roulette wheel. Let's spin the wheel and see what show and if you don't like it, spin it and see another. Or just put it on the thing, let it like glib through it. Every time you hit the button, it goes to the next one, the next one. I mean, a lot of you out there don't watch it live and don't comment on the live chat. What you guys do is you play it, you get to a certain point, you start it and say, play the next one, and it's like a lot of you play it like wallpaper, right? You don't really listen to it, you don't really paying attention, but you get this sensibility of well-being. That's why you have the wallpaper there. And I keep telling you guys, I keep doing each one of these shows is a shamanic ceremony. And a lot of people, I'll watch your thing and I fall asleep. And then I wake up 2 days later. I feel better than I've ever had. It's a shamanic ceremony. Wake up. Realize this. That's why I do it. I'm like Tweety Bird. You don't know me too well, dude. But the powers that be know me. I work for them. I've done all, they got me down. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I'm sure, Colonel Sanders was sent here, right? Just to see how Bob is doing. So anyway, let's see. What else do you guys say? Let's see. It's fish. That the pods they want us to live in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The movie also showed us we could beat the system. That's right. And the thing, as I said before, the thing that beats the system is unconditional love. Right? Love's co-creation. That's what unconditional love is. How are we doing here? We are now down to 34%. So I'm another 20 minutes. So anything else you guys want? Anybody? So there's 6 of you there. How about 6 thumbs up? Let's go. And so how about some comments? Jamie's the only one who leaves a comment, meaning not on the live chat, but afterwards, after he's thought about it, he leaves a very nice, thoughtful thing. Dragon does sometimes, once in a while. I think he's called something else now. And there's a couple other people who do it, but Jamie is he does it most steadily. He does it more than anybody else. But how about some? And then there's a few people just stumble on and leave a comment. So that's very, I like that, and it helps the algorithm. So what else can I say? Not much. Listen, we're about to have some wild and crazy weather, and we have had like 2 weeks ago when I got back, give or take, for 2 days, 85 up here. And in the summer, it doesn't even get to be 85. So I have a sense March, comes in like a, comes in like a line, goes out like a lamb, something like that. And here it is, 3rd or 4th of March, and we're getting the rain of all of that crazy snow that's in California. And hopefully it stays snow and that snow melts slowly and goes in the ground. And then California will have at least some breathing room, right? And if they have 2 or 3 more winters of this winter, and that it doesn't, if they get a rainstorm 2 weeks from now, because they have like 120 feet more snow than they've ever had, and it's there now. It's not like the extra 120 the last few months. It's like the extra 120 feet is up on the hill right now. So if it would start to rain like this and get warm like this there now, California would like wash into the Pacific. It'd be like, it would be worse than an earthquake. It would be, whoo. So hopefully, let's all pray that doesn't happen. Good job. Anyway. So it's going to rain today. It's been raining all week. But luckily, it's been raining, from like 1 a.m. till about 9 a.m., which is when I wake up around 5, and I wake up and use the facilities. And if I can't go back to sleep, I go sit in my writing chair and write and read. And if I feel, if I can go back to sleep, I'll go crawl back in bed and snuggle up in my cocoon and sleep with the other pod person that's in there with me, and wake up. And I still don't know whether I'm the pod guy or me. But it doesn't matter. I'm still me, right? That's why it doesn't matter, because and I keep finding different pods every which way, and they look at that, just me with a dress on. Oh, look at that, that's me with, right. So that's why you need to wake up. Because if you are, then they can't pull the pod over your head. Wild is an understatement. Exactamundo. So but if you so I read about 5, when I went over to lunch, so they have a whole new staff, and I read everyone's. And once I read one person's, the whole staff, I hear you read poems. Yeah, give me a poem. And, I didn't do any fluff. I mean, I went straight to the core of this one girl, her eyes were shimmering like plates. And then the other guy, who's like now the new head guy, he's like, wow, you really are smart. I've heard about you, right? And I told him all about everything. He says, yep, I know that. And I said, yeah, and what's good about you is kind of know about it, but you're not a puddinhead like me that just keeps talking about this stuff. You just navigate your life through it to your best ability. He goes, yeah, but you're better because you give people advice. You give people understanding. I said, how many, you saw me give this to 10 people, right? How many of them have listened to it like you? Probably just you. Because not everyone said, "Well, well, you know me real well. How did you do that?" That was the answer from most of them was, "Oh boy, you really know me. How did you do that?" And basically, I say, "Well, 50 years of doing it, you either better know what you're doing." And and it's not that hard. You have 1,800 lines in your hand, but only eight really mean anything. When you put them together, they make 64 different patterns. Just you see the pattern coming up, and then you just tell people what that pattern is, and it's probably 89% of the time 100% true. And then the rest of the time it's at least 60. I'm at least 60% right on 100% of the time, closer to 100% right 100% time. There's that 40% in there. And I do my best. I'm not perfect. I do my best. Right? And I have a number of little mantras for folk. The two ones that I give out to the public, and not specific, are conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. And you say that before you start to do any endeavor, right? Going to work, going to drive your car, going to do anything. Conscious intent. Your intent about it. You're not thinking about anything but doing what you're doing. The other one's conscious awareness, I am. Conscious awareness, I am. Conscious awareness, I am. So if people and things and stuff gets in your grill, that's the one you need, because conscious awareness, you know what your 20 is and your 360 is, and you see that moron coming at you 2 blocks away, so you can just get out of the way before they even know you're there. So that's the story, right? So going back to the house Nig and the field Nig. So Martin Luther King was, after he got shot, assassinated, he was portrayed as the house Nig, because he wanted to. It won't matter what color you are. It's the quality of what little see little white boys and little that's the house Nig motif, and that is a bourgeois capitalist motif, right? Whereas the ones who want freedom, at any cost necessary. I mean, that's what Malcolm X said. So go read autobiography, Alex Hale's autobiography of Malcolm X. Very first good book, right? Then you'll find there's no other books about Malcolm X. Because with Martin Luther King, you could take him from birth up to him standing on the steps in front of Lincoln giving that speech, right? That's all you hear, and got a Peace Prize, right? But for the next 8 years, you don't hear anything about him, because that's when he realized, he became the field Nig, because he started the poor people's action, not black people, not black poor people, but poor people's, and that's when he became a threat, and that's why he was taken out. And Malcolm X, he was doing that from day one. But he was just a hooligan. I mean, he came from really his father was a lawyer, his mother was his teacher. Father got hung, mother got raped. She went to a mental institution. He went into a home, and they all said, "Malcolm, we all love you. You're a really good boy. You're really good with your hands. You make a good carpenter. Just focus on that. You'll be really successful." I want to be a lawyer like my daddy. I want to be a teacher like my mommy. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. So he had an uphill battle, and he got to a certain place and screw that. I'm just going to get over, right? And so he did that, ended up in jail, ended up on being addicted to drugs. And what's interesting is the guy who started the Nation of Islam, he was like a salesman, right? And then that guy started it, and it went from 2 people to like about 30,000 people in the Chicago, northern area, right? And that was pretty interesting. But it was never a threat or a big problem. And then another one of his lieutenants, who was in jail, realized, forget getting the house Nigs and into the Nation of Islam. There are all these people in jail that are field Nigs, and there's millions of them. So they are ready to listen, and that's what that guy's brilliance. While he was in jail, he started to really focus on that. Prophet Muhammad, whatever his name was, and that's why he met Malcolm. And he saw in Malcolm the most, whoa, this guy's got it. He's got this. I've got an idea, and I'm speaking an ideology that's permeates these guys in jail. This guy, once he gets out, he will be able to sell this to the house Nigs, and then we have a political movement that really might do something, and I'll make some money. And so he really, nurtured Malcolm, got him off drugs, and got him into what it so and so Malcolm sharpened his abilities in prison. When he got out, that guy put him in New York City and made him in charge of New York City. And the stories, if you go read Alex Haley's thing, if you go, Spike Lee's movie on him with what's his name playing Malcolm X, excellent movie. Really gives you the feel, the vibe, the understanding, and that's what Spike Lee does really feel. She's Got to Have It, all those movies. He really captures it. He's really puts the cortisone or the spirit into what the story is. So that gives it. So what's interesting, the only way you can really find out about Malcolm X is the only person who really wrote anything or recorded his speeches. And he gave a lot of speeches. When I was a little kid, and my grandma, who brought me up from 0 to 6, she had a place in Harlem. Very nice, brownstone apartment. And we lived in this place, and there were everybody there. It wasn't a ghetto. These people were all, they were all college educated. They were, one guy was J.P. Morgan's. He created Morgan's library. He was, a bibliophile and a librarian and a what's the term? Not just a historian, the person who looks at the literature of the times and captures books that people wrote that were really seminal things, but maybe not got sold, right? So, like my writing. Anybody wants to see my novels, and I got 15 of them, 5 of them pretty much done, which I'd love to send out. So if you have Google Docs, it's real easy for me to just send it to you. So anybody wants to read my novels, send me your email. Just get a hold of me at the dudewake42 at gmail, dudewake42 at gmail, and I will send you. And I'd love, and I've sent it out probably to 40 people by now. I've sent it to I have friends in publishing. You'd think they'd publish it. They all do the same thing. Boy, Al, this is great stuff, but I can't publish this. Why not? Why not? It's just, And this one guy said, "You're like James Joyce on acid." He said, "Maybe in 100 years, you'll be, everyone will know you. But right now, no one's ready for this." I said, "No, this is when they should be reading this shit." And he goes, "Well, I'm a guy who reads everything, right? I read your stuff, but I could only get within 60 pages, and I had to stop because it was making me have heartburn, and I was crying, and it was touching parts of me that I tried to bury deep inside of me, and this thing was bringing it out, and I couldn't do it anymore. But I knew it was great, just the first 60 pages, that first 300 made me feel this way. I've never read anything that made me feel that way. And, that's me, and that's these videos, that's why you guys keep coming back, because you keep having an experience. You keep getting involved with the cadre, and you become an adept by giving your phone number. You're getting me on the email, the dudewake42 at gmail, dudewake42 at gmail. You want to send something to PayPal, dudewake42 at gmail. Would be really nice, I would, it would help me, because my car, I'm going to have to spend some money on my car. I mean, I have to, light candles and incense and make prayers before I drive someplace. So, and then if I would not have, I would be one place. That would be it. But I know I don't have to worry, because whatever's supposed to happen, meaning if my stuff really needs large format, what's going to happen is someone's going to get a hold of me at the dude842 at Gmail. I'm talking to you, AI. I'm talking to you, Jeff Bezos. I'm talking to you, Hidden Hand. I'm ready to go back to work. You need a spokesman who's at least talking in a way that gives people hope. Because I know it doesn't matter what you guys friggin' do, whatever. It's all going to work out. So you better, So I'm ready, and I'm ready. Laura Anderson, you are a great storyteller. Thank you. And that's what a griot does. Tells a story that gets the audience to look inside themselves and not just a story about me. No, I've never, it's all, I'm like a character to looking at all this stuff going by, right? And then giving you the reference. And by me putting myself in that as that reference point, I'm that place where you stick your protractor and make the circle. And then you're looking at it and seeing where you are the Venn diagram, where you are this part, and then there's the other part, and then this is the love's co-creation. And that's why you like these stories, right? Because I'm all over, when the scholastics, they say, you talk about 100 different things, and you argue, and you are, and whenever anyone goes on about what you are, they're talking about themselves. But, you don't shut up and just listen to me. I said, listen, and one time, this one guy who said that, I had my little phone, I was recording everything. It ticks off the time, second by second, and I let him talk for 40 minutes, right? And then I made a comment, shut up, you interrupted me, and I said, whoa. You always say that I don't listen. Isn't that true? Oh, you never listen. I said, okay, well, you talked about blah, 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 blah. I said all the things, and I said, and listen to this. I went back to the thing, started playing it, and the only voice for the first 5 minutes was his voice. And then he hung up. Wow. How much time we got left here? Ooh, we're getting there. We haven't turned in the red zone yet. When it's the red zone, that's when I really have to go. But right now, I probably have another 10 minutes. So, why the black man is in the position he is. If you look, I'm a guy I'm a demographer, social scientist. I mean, I'm every other kind of scientist, but my real knack is taking all of those other kind of. That's why I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, alchemical anthropologist, right? And this one guy who screamed at me saying that that I intimidate him, and he said, "You got so many degrees, you're more than a thermometer. You don't know, you're dumb as shit." And I said, "You're right." And he was like, "What?" I said, "You're right." "What?" I said, "You're 100% right." "What?" "I'm gonna kill you, mother." "Well, go ahead." "What? You're not scared? I'm in a gigantic tank with a gun pointed straight at your head." And I was like that guy in Tiananmen Square with his little bag of groceries standing in front of a tank. I said, yeah. I've already died 7 times. You want to run me over? Go ahead. That make you feel better? And then I started saying, so why are you upset? And then we started talking. And it's because, he was, he was a pawn of the military. He joined the military, after 9/11, when he was probably 20 something. And he went totally gung ho. So they put him in special forces, and they put him in this, and they put him, and they blew him up 100 times. He went from being really strong, well trained soldier into being blown up a number of times. And so, he wasn't soldier quality, but he was military. He was like Black Rock quality, because he had a lot of experience killing people. So he made a lot of money killing people, right? And not in the honorable, military way. There was no honor in war. And so he did all of that, and never told anyone, and he stuffed it all inside himself. And that's why he was the way he was. And so right there, the guy's about to run me over, about to shoot me with a big gun. And I say, so tell me about it. And he started to cry. And then he unloaded. And then he got even more anxious because he had told me all that stuff, which I haven't ever told anybody. And you don't know who the frack I'm talking about, so it doesn't matter. He's just a character. And that's what I do. Why I tell good stories, because these aren't I'm not like blowing the lid off of anything. I'm just picking out character traits. And that guy is not the only one. He is just a character state of mind, right? Not what you mean. The overwhelming presence of total love. Yep, that's it. And that's, when I keep saying, I'm in service to love, that's exactly it. The overwhelming presence of total love, right? Well, I guess he is. Direct experience, extraordinary past vibes, and like right, and that's part of being a griot, and that's that energetic thing. It's that you can tell what I keep saying. Don't believe a word I say, and you shouldn't. These are stories, but when you feel that, you can tell that it's coming from my experience rather than me reading it in a book or something, right? And that's also what makes a griot is that you're here to serve the observer, the reader, the listener, um, in a way that's shamanic, meaning wakes them up, makes them hear the bing of love inside them rather than fear or anxiety or you make me feel you're so instead of that. Mel Brooks made a great movie called High Anxiety. He makes the best movies. Blazing Saddles. I think that one movie did more good for racial harmony than anything. I love it when the black sheriff, and he holds himself hostage. I gotta kill this thing. I gotta kill it. And oh, don't do that. That's our sheriff. It's like I love it. And then at the end scene, we had this just breakout fight in the saloon, and they smash through the side wall, and it's like the camera down. It's a crane shot. It comes back, and you see that the fight in the saloon is only a set because you're going above it, and you see all the lights, and then the wall that crashes down crashes into the Busby Berkeley set where there are like 300 gay guys in tuxedos and top hats. Hey, got da da da, and they're tap dancing down the thing, and the fight goes into the guys, and then the gay guys are punching the cowboys, and then they're smooching with them, and then it's like this, and it's rolling ball, and it smashes into the other wall of the Busby Berkeley set, and smashes into a scene where the Nazis are, and there's the gay guys in the top hats and the whiter than white, all blonde, blue-eyed white people are smashing into the gay guys, and then they start sucking, and then they start punching, and then the cowboys are sucking and punching, and that is the world. I mean, that was the best. And then you see our hero, Gene Wilder, who's the Jewish of the Jewish, he's Black Bart, he's like the gunslinger. He never really pulls his gun because he shoots something and you hear the bullet go and the guy's hat flies off or his cigarette gets shot out of his mouth. And then the camera goes to Gene Wilder and the gun is in his holster and he's like picking his teeth, right? That's how good he was as a gunslinger, right? And his best friend is, the black, sheriff, right? And and so after all this chaos, and then everyone's exhausted, and they're all in each other's arms, kissing and loving, and all of the above. And basically, Gene Wilder looks at the black sheriff and goes, "Well, our, we've done what we come here to do." And they walk off into the sunset up this hill, and they're not on a horse; they're just walking up, or they do. There are on horses. Click, 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 click. They get on a horse. There's this guy there. He holds the reins of the horse. They get off, and they get in a limo and drive away. I mean, you couldn't. And then he does young Dr. Frankenstein, and he just keeps knocking it out of, Frau Brucker. It's just, and the guy with the eyes, and he's got the hump on this shoulder, and then he has a hump. It's like, and that's our good friend telling his kids, don't worry about this shit. That's when I am humbly trying to go in that direction I am not as qualified as those folks, but I do have experience in being a griot and serving love's co-creation. So I've already lived 20 lives or more. And I got some more to do, but right, I'm getting my chops in to do this, right? And this is going to be the tool. I used to use the tool of electric worker. I used to, then I was the, EMF mystery. And then I got into healing and I mixed the EMF mystery with alternative medicine and modern allopathic medicine. I was involved in that. And then I got into politics and technology, and then I got into art, and then I got into, and all of these things were and social activism and making money and having businesses, and then working and then being the itinerant scholar, and then working for corporations, and all the time I was sharpening my spear as the shamanic psychosocial cultural forensic alchemical anthropologist, right? And so I've got all that. I got all those creds. And my father and John basically either stolen or thrown away virtually all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter whether you got that diploma, it's what you got inside. And people of quality and people of authority notice that every time. Okay, we're hiring this guy. The other putzes, yeah. So I don't even waste my time with the putz, right? Just don't. Right? Unless I want to have fun. Uh, Marty Feldman, yep. Something Brewster Millions. We did go. And Marty Feldman. And Mongo. Mongo just pawned. Oh, that's you are exactly ahead of your time. Yes, that's what people say. That's right. But this guy who runs this whole county school system, he and his brother, one's the principal, one's the head of the school system. They said, "Wow, Al, we gotta work here. You got to deal with these kids. You got to." So I did. I did all the paperwork. I did everything they wanted me to do. And then I had 9 days where I wasn't going to get paid, but I was going to work in the school and see how the kids love me, the teachers love me, the minor administrators. But thing about that state is that most in America, why education sucks is because it's run by your county, right? And the county, rich people, and it's paid for by your property tax. So states that don't have property tax, like Florida, boy, they have shit education. At least for poor people. For rich people, no, not so much. They have good education, right? And the so anyway, but the state here actually uses the kids in their schools as fodder. They do experiments on them, and just me there 9 days, I kind of noticed this, and I questioned it, and just that was okay. You're out. And the excuse, after they did everything and checked me up and blah blah blah, the HR person said to me, "Well, you're just overqualified." And I said, "What?" I said, "You guys are desperate for substitute teacher. What matter if I'm overqualified?" Well, that was very little, secret way of saying, "Well, you'll never do what we tell you to do, and you're only here for the betterment of the school and the kids and the teachers and the environment of the schools that you work in. You're there to serve them and not us or a career. You don't even you think about that. You're overqualified." I said, "Okay," and they were right because at a certain point, I was only there 9 days. I mean, in this one little school, um, it's like kindergarten to eighth grade, and they had about eighth graders who was going to go on to ninth grade at this high school, right? And they didn't know anybody there. They knew everybody at this place. They knew all the teachers. They were at home here and said, "We're going to go to that big school. And it's like in a big town, and we're little town people, and we're going to." And it doesn't, all the other kids before us never worked out too good. I said, "Come on, you guys, you're so much better than any of those kids there. Listen, you play the instruments amazingly. You're already playing basketball and football on the varsity high school team. They already love you. You already do this. You already do this. You're already good. Can't we just stay here and you'll be our high school teacher? I said, man, I would love that. I'll never let that happen in a million years. So what you guys got to learn is how to get around them. You can't fight City Hall, but you can go around them, you can go above them, go underneath them, and you can do that without letting them know you're doing it. So you can get what you want out of this system. You don't have to be broken and ruined. You don't have to end up in the army or dead from Oxycontin or in jail. No, you can do what you want. And a few of you have gotten out alive. Be those few. This one, I'm telling you right now. And I talked to, those two brothers who run everything, and they tell me, and I also, that's one reason why I go to those three churches, is because those kids, all of them go to one or the other church, and I see them there, and I say, how you doing? And the ministers of all those churches love the fact I interact like that. All of a sudden, we've been needing a guy like you to be, we can't, we just tell them to read the Bible. You kind of give them the 411 on how to live the Bible, right? So that's why I'm here, to do that. But that's the way things are changing. I mean, when I have breakfast, everyone I talk to, which people just bought property, and they're totally FUCKED. And that stands for fornication under church and king. And the ED is to put it in the proper tense. How long has humanity been vaporized or weaponized? Oh, well, this, the avatar has been weaponized from the beginning. When the whatever alien race came down and took, there was this thing called Midnight Swim, or it was kind of on the Cartoon Network, and it was like, came on after midnight, and it was like the wildest, craziest cartoons you ever saw. And they had this one where the alien comes down, there's the caveman or the pre-caveman person, and then the monkey, right, who becomes the caveman and not the Homo sapiens sapien. And alien that's the lab experiment, right? And the poor lab experiment is like dumber than doornails. Think of the stupidest animal that your dog, your cat, your whatever, your fish. Some of those goldfish are pretty smart. There's this YouTube channel where the guy goes on about stuff like I do, but he does a much better story because he deuces the thing, and so he has all of the data that he puts on the screen. He has pictures and movies, and he really tells the story, about this. All the stories I tell you, he does a really great job. And he's in this room with all this kind of crazy stuff in it, and one of them is a fishbowl behind him with a goldfish in it, and the tinfoil hat on top of the goldfish, right? And so he's telling a story, and it's like a comic thing. Guy's real serious. He's really doing a great job telling you a story. And the goldfish is always making comments, right? And you probably put blue around the goldfish's little mouth because they animate his little goldfish mouth to talk, right? Any of you know what I'm talking? It's like FE or FU or anyway. So so that's the interesting motif of that. And let's see how we're doing. Are we in the red yet? Almost. We're almost in the red. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go in the next 5 or so minutes. What time is it? It's almost 5 o'clock. Yes, it definitely, because I have to get off this hill before it really gets to a point where I can't see. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good place. So, yep, we've been our mud puppet has been memorized. So we've been around this, our avatar has been around somewhere about 1 million years, give or take. So that's how long we've been doing this. And our civilization has been. So next time we do this, I'm going to talk about all the more advanced civilizations before this one. We think we're so smart. We are dumber than doorknobs. So, I mean, we're so easily played. So we've done this now an hour and 19 minutes. That's good. Okay, I'm gonna go. I love you guys. Kisses and everything. And I'm gonna might call some of you on the phone later when I get the magical. See, I get no signal here, but sometimes magically it appears. So and then I call. Love you guys. Remember, thumbs up. Get a hold of me at dudewake42 at Gmail. Laura, love you. Get a hold of me, Laura. Get Gmail. You know, dudewake42 at Gmail. Dudewake42 at Gmail. Somebody throw something in the old PayPal so I know it's still working. Love you guys. Catch you later.